Hey, what's going on, guys? Coach Luca back here with
Joel Jamieson.
And we're going to riff today on something I get asked a lot, and that is on how to increase vertical jump. Now, number one is I used to play pro basketball my whole life. One of the things I worked on for forever because I wasn't genetically gifted was
White man can jump,
if
they train it.
Billy Hoyle, if you guys remember, but it actually did. I studied it so much to be able to dunk. I've dunked the first time when I was 17, and then I got to having a pretty damn high vertical, running 40-inch vertical, and I can still jump, at my old age, damn it. But now I train quite a few basketball players, basketball teams. This question comes up because that's one of those things, like everybody wants to do it.
Yep. I trained a ton of volleyball athletes too.
Yep.
When I was building a volleyball program back in the day, I get a lot of middle school athletes, high school athletes, and of course they want to jump for volleyball. So, this contributes to a lot of sports, whether it's basketball, volleyball, or just all-around explosiveness. This is a big part of athleticism. So
yeah, I mean the thing is,
makes sense.
You say like if you have a high vertical jump, most of the time you can also say like this guy's an athlete, right? Doesn't mean that they're skilled maybe in a sport, but you could definitely just from that say it's an athlete. Now, there's kind of 4 things that I believe that you got to improve to improve your vertical jump, and we're going to kind of dig into the assessment of it, like what should you work on to get the most out of it. But like one of the biggest things is just like force. Right? How much force can you produce? If you can, this is a basic example. If you can squat or deadlift 100 pounds, and with the same kind of variables, you can then get up to 300 pounds, you're probably going to be able to jump higher. I say probably because, there are some other factors here when it comes to jumping. And there's also a reason why powerlifters can't jump high, right?
Yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, they're bigger, fatter people.
Yeah,
no offense to your power lifter, but yes, of course, there's limits in what this is going to do.
Absolutely.
For your limit strength, max force is only going to contribute a certain percentage. Above that, it's probably not super
exactly
beneficial.
And in this part, put it this way: in high school, I would say athletes can really improve their vertical by improving force, but it also requires this, right? Like the speed of the force production, and in general, it's got to be less than 0.5 seconds. Honestly, like most of the kind of jumps in plyometrics would say are even less than 0.2 seconds. So not only do you have to apply force, you got to be able to apply it fast.
And that's what power is, basically.
Exactly. It's like how do we apply as much force as possible as fast as possible. And this is kind of like where I would say this is where more strength training comes into play, right? And this is where more I would say plyometrics and jump training, and they are different. So I'll explain. Plyometric training is things that you can produce force, in less than 0.5 seconds, but there's a stretch reflex. So I'm jumping over a hurdle and then over another hurdle. That would be a plyometric jump. Me just jumping on a box, that's jump training, which is still important, but they are different. Okay, and you gotta work this too. I'll break down where you can work this. Number 3 is get in the positions. So this would be mobility. If you're really stiff and you can't get into certain positions, it's going to be challenging for you to get as much force as possible. So think about if I go down and my back starts rounding because I can't put my glutes into the most powerful position, I'm not going to be able to produce as much force, even if I am pretty damn strong, right? So getting mobile, just like for sprinting, if I can't fully extend my hip and I'm super tight, if I get that, I'll actually be able to produce more force and be better off. So if you're really tight in your ankles, in your hips, in your upper back, you don't have good mobility and stability, that's gonna be a problem. And I would even with this get positions, say core, okay? And here's the reason why. Imagine a pencil pushing through Jello, right? That Jello is not gonna move much, but if you push a pencil through a rock, it's gonna move. So this is our rock, right? We have to be able to transfer force up, and if we don't have those things, we're gonna have a problem. Number 4, one most people don't think about is this. Okay, dropping body fat or weight, okay? Now, I'll say this. If you, I would say body fat percentage, there we go. If you weigh, 20 pounds more than you'd like to, and it's from body fat, it's like jumping with a weight vest. So this is one of those things that like we've had athletes where they get leaner because they improve their nutrition and their verticals go up, their power production goes up because they're basically with the same force and speed moving a lesser load. And that's one of the best ways also to integrate and improve all of these. Now, before we even go into the next part, I got a couple questions here for Joel. we kind of do an assessment of static proficient athlete, dynamic proficient athlete, which means static proficient athletes can move a lot of, force from the spot. So vertical jump. If I just jump from the spot and jumped high, and the static dynamic proficient athlete would be able to actually jump higher if they stepped off a box and then jumped up, right? So if you're one or the other, if you're a dynamic proficient athlete, usually you'll do really well doing some more strength training. If you're a dynamic proficient static proficient athlete, you're strong, but you're not very elastic, you do probably better doing more plyometric training, and you could fall somewhere in between. I was kind of an in-between guy. I'm still an in-between guy, right? So that tells you if you're weak but really bouncy, this is going to really help you out. Most of the time, probably getting more mobile too. But if you're really strong but not bouncy, doing more of this is going to help you. But it's funny, one time me and Joel were talking about, I would say, getting the vertical up, and you mentioned like if somebody said, listen, I got 8 to 12 weeks or 12 to 16 weeks, and my career depends on it, and you wanted to improve their vertical jump, like what would you do with them?
Yeah, so this is something I dove into a lot, not just training youth in high school volleyball players, but other professional level players, of just how do we develop this in the shortest time possible. And I dug into the research, and looked at every possible source I could find. And good old Yuri Verkhoshansky, who strength coaches out there will know who Yuri Verkhoshansky was. If you're not in the field, you probably don't know who this guy was, but he was a Russian who essentially invented the concept of plyometrics. So he really was the godfather of plyometrics. And so I started digging into his work. I bought a bunch of his material, which is translated from Russian, even talked to his daughter, and started following his programs. Now, at least semblance of them. When you dig into his programs, you see something that you probably don't expect. The first is, it's literally like 3 exercises over like 8 to 12 weeks. So he basically combines all these. So for the force production, it's squats, right? It's fairly heavy squats over time. For this side of things, it's explosive jumps, and it's high intensity plyometrics, which is how he actually intended them to be used more often, not what he called depth jumps. But it's really just these 3 exercises progressed and periodized over the course of the program. So phase 1 would be a lot more of the strength work with some of the jump work. Then as you progress through that first 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how long the program was, you transition into doing a lot less strength work and a lot more jump and plyometric work. So it's this progression. But the biggest thing is, on top of that, the second thing you see, and this is important, write this one down here, is rest intervals, okay? If your goal is to produce enough force, power, and just overall explosiveness to jump off the ground as high as you can, and your goals get higher and higher every time as you progress, you need longer rest in between your sets. Because if we are training at a point where we are just doing jump after jump after jump after jump, we are basically not developing the maximal jump capacity, okay? We're developing our jump endurance or power endurance, but if you start looking at the rest intervals, that's one thing that jumped out at me, is Verkhoshansky's program would have 5 minutes of rest sometimes, 10 minutes of rest sometimes, a long rest period, because you want to give the nervous system the chance to completely fully regenerate so that it can repeat at a high quality effort once again. If you're doing lots and lots of volume, but again, you're doing it so quickly that you're fatiguing and your jump's not maximal each time, you're not getting the same benefit. So lots and lots of rest intervals in between these high intensity efforts.
I love that you brought this up, because right now you see a lot of this where they say, hey, programs that say we're doing plyometric training. And when you actually look at the training, there's a bunch of jumps, a lot of jumps, 10, 15, 20 jumps with really short rest breaks, and then there's more jumps. And really what that is essentially conditioning, some form of conditioning, which could be anaerobic, and you're just training to have less vertical jump, doing it repeatedly over and over, rather than maximal vertical jumps, right? And there's a time and a place for that if that's something that you want to develop. But when you want to really truly increase your vertical jump, like you want to get stronger and apply that force faster. And like Joel said, the more specific you get, the more it's going to improve. Now, in the real world, sometimes we can't do that, but we should take that knowledge and apply it. Because if you're in the off season and your goal is to get stronger and get more explosive, you should always also think about whether you're playing basketball every day, whether you're doing all types of conditioning. Because again, then it's taken away from that pie of improving your vertical and your explosiveness and your relative strength, which is kind of the things that we want to do the most of. The other thing that I'll say that this is important, more so from anything else, if you're a ball player, is actually just jumping. Meaning, hey, if you ever try to dunk it, you could actually jump pretty high, but if you don't practice dunking, you're not going to be good at dunking. You might be good at jumping high, right? I used to always go on a court and like legitimately try to dunk, throw it to myself, rest a long time. That's a critical factor, where we started training some basketball athletes and have like these long breaks in between, and they'd say like, hey, we're not getting smoked, we're not getting exhausted and sweaty and tired, and then because of that, it's not a good workout and it's not getting us in shape. But we were actually doing exactly what helps you improve your vertical jump.
Yep.
Okay, so make sure that as again, you're training, that you take the science of what helps you increase your vertical jump, explosiveness, relative strength, and apply it in the right way so that you get the most out of it. So if you like this video, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, because like I said, we're going to be dropping a lot more of those. If you got any questions, drop them in there in the comments. Me and Joel will be doing more of this and educating, giving you guys examples so you can become a better athlete.